why don't we talk about the problem of the perception of a great many people about the risks that are run by confrontations with the black community. Now, we're dealing now with a matter not of individuals, but of statistics. You may have seen that 60 Minutes segment a few months ago. The situation was as follows. There was a kind of a police blockade, if you like, questioning people who went through this zoning section in St. Louis. And if it was a black driver from East St. Louis, they tended to scrutinize him and his credentials a little bit more carefully. Now, abstractly, that's not just. As a de facto matter of how does one protect oneself, one has to be simply blunt about it. The rate of black crime is hugely higher than the rate of white crime, and therefore people jump to conclusions, or rather they apprehensively take certain precautions that they wouldn't take if, let's say, they were discussing the subject with a middle-aged white woman driving the car through. Under these circumstances, when you face those statistics, you say, well, human beings are as human beings are, and they necessarily deal in stereotypes. People naturally deal in stereotypes. Now, they may be wrong in doing so, but that is their first impulse. So that when people say, well, Rodney King suffered a special humiliation, you've got to add those factors that presumably influence that first jury.
But does it justify? Let me give the example. Chuck D has talked about being stopped by the Los Angeles Police Department, not because he's committed a crime, not because he's done anything, but because of his uniform, right? He's wearing a baseball cap, he's wearing a jogging suit. He fits the profile.
That's right.
And the perceptions that you seem to say exist would justify a police officer, or even a citizen, being nervous because he is a black man who is not in a suit and a tie. And he's saying that's not right.
De facto, yes. If you've, and I'm sure you have been going through security depots in New York and in Stockholm, and if you look like Sirhan, they're going to ask you more questions than they will if they look at me, or for the matter if they look like him, because there is a stereotype of the Arab terrorist, the Palestinian terrorist, and they're looking for him. And under the circumstances, all those little enzymes that get you kind of activated in that situation. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're walking through the streets of Harlem and you spot 11, 17-year-olds, you might say, God, I read yesterday in Newsweek magazine that 25% of people of that age in Washington, D.C. are on drugs, 25% are in jail, and 25% are on probation. Well, the odds aren't very good, so maybe I'd better head in another direction. Now, this is an abstract of injustice to the person like Chuck D, who is one of the people walking there minding his own business. But I'm simply saying, if you want causes, accept that as a cause. The average white person in a situation like that is frightened.
Chuck D?
I want to talk about stereotyping because that's very pertinent to what we're talking about. I mean, maybe black people in Africa should have stereotyped white people about 500 years ago, and we would have been better off. So, but because we live in a mutated existence today, the rules somehow are flipped on us. And we do live in a mutated existence. Like I say, there's no such thing as a black community. No such thing. I'm being plain, simple, and blunt. We're still on a plantation. Because when you have a community that you can call your own, you have control over the economic situation and the development of economic situations. You have control over the educational curriculum that's able to teach your people and protect them from an environment that's really been foreign to them all along. And you have control over a situation where you can police your own people and you have the right to enforce your own laws. That don't exist in black communities. So it ain't a black community. And Los Angeles was one situation that was caught on camera. That year where I was touring around the country in 80 cities, 80 markets, and all of them are black, where we go around and tour on that particular year, I found out about 5 similar incidents about police brutality. So what it was, like I said before, was a powder keg where people say, oh, I can relate to that, and it's getting to the point. If you think it's crazy now, LA is something that happened. But you got Atlanta, you got Kansas City, you got St. Louis, you got Chicago, New York ain't sure about itself, Philly, Miami, you know, you're talking about if these things don't get, you know, at least brought to a table, such as a forum, which is a good place to start, you're gonna have some problems in the next 2 years. And the problem is also is that white people don't know enough about how we feel, and white community, and I'm talking about a large majority, don't know how we think. But we're forced to figure out how white people think and live and how they feel. We're educated on white, but white's not educated on us. And that has a problem to do on race relations.